Well, hey, my name's Jay. Welcome to my booth. I work in voiceover if we haven't met yet. And today I was working on a project with a client and colleague of mine. Um, and equalization and frequency came up in conversation. So I thought I'd just talk about those while I had it fresh on my mind and get you started on understanding that and using it in your own processing. So, sound behaves in frequencies, or sound has different frequencies. And the way I visualize it is if I was looking at a piano keyboard, for example, the lower keys are lower frequencies, and then the higher keys are higher frequencies, and everything in between. You can actually tune pianos, or pianos are tuned to specific frequencies of sound very precisely. And sound frequency is measured in hertz. And what those are is the number of waves, the up and down of the sound wave per second. And the general range of human hearing is 20 hertz, so 20 ups and downs per second, up to 20,000 hertz, which is a lot of those waves going up and down per second. Each of those waves have different lengths and physical lengths. As they move through the air, they'll repeat perfectly after a certain distance, which is why in certain rooms you'll get interesting resonances. Those are resonant frequencies. So a lot of voiceover performers will try to fish those out and take care of them with equalization or EQ. That's done on occasion. Sometimes you can tune your room physically so that it can sort of uh, tame down those resonant frequencies. But for me, for example, I'm in a pretty small room, so I get some frequency buildup or resonant frequencies, meaning the waves going back and forth here in my booth cause certain frequencies to be a little bit boomier than others, despite the fact that I have a lot of absorbent materials around me. So that's sound frequency, and you can go on for hours, and there are people who are much more learned in it than I am. So I'm just going to talk about the way I interact with frequency as a voiceover performer. So I've got my DAW open here, and I was working on an audiobook for the New York Public Library earlier today. And I just pulled open a bunch of different equalizers that I have at my disposal, and they look kind of different. Just thumbing through them, this is a visualizer, or this is a visual equalizer, and then there's these types of equalizers, which are modeled off after big honkin' pieces of audio equipment that you'd see in a studio. Then there's ones that just are visual equalizers, but just look a little different. And then there's graphic equalizers, which look like this. And they all do the same thing. They let you either boost or attenuate or add or subtract from certain frequencies of sound. So if you look at this one, this is a graphic equalizer, and you'll notice at the top here, there's a ton of different sound frequencies labeled corresponding to each of these sliders. And on the left side, I've got -20 and +20 and a range in between. And at the center is 0 dB. So where it's set right now, any recorded sound that I play, it's not going to change any of the frequencies that come through it. If, however, I select one of these sliders at, say, 63 decibel or 63 hertz, I can add to it, boost by 3 decibels or 12 decibels or 20 decibels, meaning any recording that I send through this processor will boost at 63 decibels by 20, or at 63 hertz by 20 decibels. On the other side of things, I can cut. I can pull down by -3 decibels, etc. So the way that folks will often use these is select bands, pull all these down, and you'll get something that might look something like this. So you're adjusting a bunch of different frequencies. Uh, and these visual equalizers do the exact same thing, but they just do it in a slightly different fashion. So there's different pips here that I can choose and drag, and it's doing the same thing, but it just gives you a more visual representation of how everything's being affected. So if I take everything back to its uh, normal flat setting, nothing's going to change here. So if I play this, and I'll take my headphones off because it'll start playing the audio, and I click play, you'll see my voice showing up as different frequencies. So here at the bottom, it's telling me which frequencies are at what levels. And this is kind of cool because it's showing a lot of information from my voice shows up around here. And then it kind of curves down and you'll see little peaks of information here. But if you're just starting out, I would just apply a high pass filter. This is a super simple processing technique that just cleans up your sound a little bit. What a high pass filter looks like is pretty simple. If I click on this one, you'll see it's already says flat high pass, and it's starting at 83 hertz. That means that anything below 83 hertz is getting cut out of my recording. And any frequency, any sound information higher, a high pass, higher than 83 hertz, gets to pass through this equalizer. I can also change the slope of this to make it more dramatic, meaning it'll sharply cut off any frequencies at this 83 hertz mark. And generally speaking, for lower registered voices such as mine, or generally more male identifying voices, about 50 hertz is where you'll start to lose information if you cut above that. You can, of course, I've seen recommendations for up to 75 hertz and just play with it. But if you find your voice getting a little thin, back off a little bit and just drop that down. Doing that on a graphic equalizer, I sort of did it unconsciously here, but it would look more or less like this. This is that same curve that we see here. Doop. And I've just modeled it in this graphic one. So starting at 80 hertz, it starts to go down, down until no sound's coming through. And if you have a higher registered voice, more of a tenor or a more typical female identifying voice, you may even be able to bring this all the way up to 100 hertz. So it looks something like this. And I've heard my colleagues can even go up to 120 hertz if they have a higher voice. Admittedly, I don't do this high pass equalization on any voice but my own. So don't take those numbers as gospel and play around, and when in doubt, less is more. So that's equalization. I hope this was helpful for you. There's much, much more that you can dig into here, and I will touch on it later, but when you're just starting out, that's really all you need to do. So until the next one, I'll catch you then. Toodles.